What's going on, peeps? It's Wrath here, hanging out today, playing some Idle Heroes. I want to thank you guys so much for coming to hang out with me today. If you liked the video, don't forget, smash that thumbs up button and show your support. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe as well. Alright guys, we're here today on the Big Daddy account to talk about the new events. Now I know this is a day late, we had some other stuff going on in the real worlds, so I didn't get to it yesterday, but you know, we'll cover it today, that's what we do. I'll get it covered, I promise you that much. There's been a couple of changes to the game, now on top of my head I can't remember them because I was like, oh, whatever. Think, Wrath, think with your brain, place. I don't know. I know one of them was going to be over here in the skins. There was some new skins added. There we go. Bloody War God was added. The original Sin was added. Golden Age. All of these, pretty much. These four, I think, were added. I don't think anything else was added. If there was, I don't know. Maybe that? I don't know. There was some stuff added. There was some stuff added in the skin shop in case you're looking for skins. There's also a red dot applied to your daily check-ins, which is actually really nice because since it got moved, I forget about it all the time. And now it puts a little red dot up there. It's a little easier to make sure you don't. And that's handy. There was something else that was kind of important. Notice. There we go. Look at that. Using my brain place for things. Oh yes, that's what it was. Your offline auto battle now is a 10-hour long timer. That's fantastic. It was 8 hours, which it works for most people. Most people don't sleep more than 8 hours. Some people, like myself, tend to sometimes do that very thing. I like to sleep. I love sleeping. Sleeping's a good thing, all right? But anyways, it now lasts for 10 hours, which is really nice in case you're not just immediately on your 8-hour schedule and you can't just directly get on the game after you wake up or something. This gives you like a 2-hour buffer zone to get back on the game and not miss out on loot from the campaign, which is really nice. That's just, I think it's really handy. They also optimized the help of the 10-star replacement, which I assume is in here. I probably can't do it. She's in my arena, isn't she? Of course she is. Whatever. I guess there's an optimized help button there. It's pretty simple. I mean, I don't think you really needed a whole bunch of help on it, but hey, whatever. Improvements are improvements. But those are the basic things out of the way. Let's talk about the events. First up, there's a little new thingy going on here. Look at these little fairy people. They even move. But over the course of the week, we're going to get some stuff for free, so it's always nice, especially for a new player who've just started the game. You get some free crap. Free crap is always good crap. But you can get an avatar, which I am rocking myself right now. 2019, woo, here it comes. And you get 500 gems on day 1. Day 2, some glorious relics. Never a bad idea to have some of those. They're really handy. Probably one of the better currencies in the game right now, because you can buy a lot of stuff with them that is very difficult to obtain. Day 3, you get a Das Moog skin. Really hot skin. I like it. I actually use it on my Das Moog. But it's kind of a weird reward, I would say, because I don't know. It's a weird reward. Like, I don't know. I don't know why it's weird to me. It's just weird that they would give a dark skin away at day 3. I don't know. It's a thing. I'll take it. I've already got one, but cool. Anyways, day 4, you're going to get some casino spins or wishing coins, whatever the crap. To me, it'll always be casino chips. It's the way they're always going to be. Some people are like, what is he talking about? I'm talking about these. If I say casino chips, it's wishing coins. It's kind of like when I say Shia, I guess it's supposed to be Sia, but guess who doesn't care? Wrath. To me, it's always going to be Shia. Always will be a thing. Never going to change it. And also you get some super chips as well, which aren't bad. I mean, they're not great, but for free, never. And nothing for free is really bad unless it's like a disease. Free disease is not good. Not good a thing. Anyways, day 5, you're going to get probably the best reward of all of them. And that's going to be 10 heroic summons and 5 prophet orbs. Pretty decent chunk of, I guess, gems, but it's not really gems, it's just converted to resources already. But that's about 2,500 gems worth of orbs and 1,500 worth of heroic scrolls. So that's about 4,000 gems on day 5 just to log in. Definitely worth making sure you log in each day and grabbing these out. Day 6, you do get an elite 5-star hero, which is great. Unfortunately, when you just click on the 5-star heroes, the elite fragments, there's no ability to see what's in them. I wish there was. I really wish there's a way to click and see like the inventory of 5-star elite fragments, even if you didn't have one. I think it'd be just a nice little function. But those are great. Those can be great. They're not always great, but they can be. And then day 7, you get another 5 glorious relics. So essentially, you get 10 free glorious relics just for logging in this week. An elite 5-star hero, 4,000 gems worth of goodies here, some casino stuff for the event, and a hot schmexy skin plus an avatar and some gems. Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal for just logging in. Can't really argue with that. New Year's specials. I don't know. I'm not going to pick this one up because I don't use Mim. So his skin, whilst it's super hot Mim. It's also not a unit I build or ever plan to have, so the skin itself is kind of a wasted deal. It's okay. Let me clarify. It's not a bad deal. Okay, in terms of the dollar to gem ratio that you're going to get out of the package, it's pretty solid. It's just it's not something I care to get. These right here, the advancing gift boxes, they're kind of like the upper tier. We'll talk about those in a second. I guess you can talk about it right now, whatever. Essentially, there's 5 things in the package. You have a 20% chance to get any of them. So essentially, statistically, out of 20 of these, you're going to get 4 heroic summons, 4 prophet orbs, 4 wishing coins, 45-star hero shards, and 20 orange artifact fragments. Which isn't bad. That's decent extra loot, but none of it just jumps off the page at me as like, dude, you've got to buy this. This is going to be a must-have thing. I just don't get that. 80 wishing coins, super chips, whatever you want to call them, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good deal for the $50 because in the value packages, the 80 casino chips comes with the $100 package. Of course, you don't get the super chips, but whatever. Not super important. And you also get 3,000 gems. So for $50, it's obviously better than a normal $50 offer, unless you've never bought a $50 package before, in which case you do get an extra bonus of gems and such. But it's not a bad deal. It's just, to me, I don't see it as like a necessary thing. Like last week's, where you got the extra sock opening, 35 heroic scrolls and such. To me, that was a much better deal for $50 than this one is. I just don't really see this one as a great deal. I mean, it's a good deal. It's just not one that I want. But there you go. If you really want to pick it up, you can. If you're using Mim, obviously grab that skin because it's hot. But I don't know. Just for me, it doesn't seem like it's worth $50. Any hoodles. This brings us to the Heaven Gift Box. Oh, I don't know. It's heaven. But anyways, your little baby ones that you get from the campaign, I guess more readily, the more common drops, they are going to give you 100,000 gold and 70,000 spirit each. So if you open 10, you're going to get 10 times the amount, so 700,000 spirit and 1,000,000 gold. They do drop pretty regularly, and especially now that the auto battle campaign loot lasts for 10 hours, it's much easier to make sure you're getting the max amount of event items from item event drops. Like the next event that should come out after this will be an item exchange event where you get like a special certain currency from the campaign that you use to spend in a shop. Now that it's open for 10 hours, it makes it a little easier for everybody to make sure they're getting the max amount of event item drops, so that's kind of nice. But these are just, I guess, little extra things. Not bad. Grab them, get some free loot out of them. But these are the ones people will be hunting for because they have the better drops in them. And these also do drop from the campaign event. So you get them. They're just a little more rare than these suckers here. Value packages, we already kind of talked about. Nothing super special there. Wishing coins, super wishing coins, they're a thing. Whatevs. And then we got the actual event itself. Spinning in the Wishing Well. I don't know why they do this. Wishing Well event done. I don't know why that's the name of the event. It doesn't make sense to me. It should just be Wishing Well event. And like, why done is on there, I do not know. I knoweth not. But anyways, these events are probably one of the easiest events for free-to-play and new players to complete. Now, obviously, if like a brand new player and this pops up, you're not going to have enough, wishing coins to complete the event. It's not going to be a thing straight out the gate. But if it's like your second month playing and you've had a month to gather these things up, as long as you're not spinning them willy-nilly in between events, which you should not be doing, these are the easiest events to complete. They were still easy even back in the day before it was a 300-point completion. It used to be a 600 spins to complete, and even then as a free-to-play player, you could still do it pretty regularly. So now there's been knocked down to 300 points, or actually 240 points as long as you're level 80 plus or VIP 2. 240 spins. Not really that hard to get 240 casino chips. It's really easy to do. But the good thing about it is it's going to help you chain progress for the more important events like Prophet Orbs, because this is going to give you a hot 8 Prophet Orbs for a full completion and 8 Super Chips. Now, the Super Chips aren't super duper great, but if you just get them along the way, they're nice. They can give you some extra stuff, some extra gold, things like that. Monster Bloods to level your monster early game is really kind of handy. Of course, you have a chance to get good heroes and whatnot off the wheel as well. But the primary loot that you look for in the casino events is obviously the Prophet Orbs. The heroes are generally B-tier heroes that are given in the casino events now because they're so easy to complete, which, understandable. If an event's super duper easy to complete, you don't want to give God-tier heroes away in it because then it's just super easy to get them. They're no longer God-tier if everybody has them. But you also get 5 relics. Not a lot of relics, but again, like I said, this is one of the easiest events in the game to complete, so they don't want to give out a ton of crap. But like I said, on this one, it's easy to just do a single completion. If you're a monthly card, user, you can realistically probably do a double completion every month on this without too much difficulty. Between the Aspen Dungeon and the Marketplace, you can get a really solid amount of Wishing Well events, Wishing Well coins, whatever, and that should give you pretty much an easy shot to 480 casino chips per month it doesn't seem like it's really that hard to do. But any hoodles, that's that part. Then we have the shelter mission. Now, the shelter mission is usually kind of like Wishing Well in terms of the heroes offered. Usually, god tier heroes are not here. It's usually mid-tier heroes that have use, that are pretty solid, but in some cases, they just kind of fall off, or they used to be good, now they're not so great. In this case, Ormus is probably the worst one on offer in the event. He's really not good right now, unless he gets his buff sometime soon. But anyways, the big reason to do the shelter mission in its entirety, or at least as much as you can do in the regular faction, is mainly for the gear. It's not so much for the heroes, unless you are building the heroes, like in Kamath's case. Kamath's a pretty solid hero, especially in PvP, in the tower. Outside of that, he's really not that great, but in those areas, he does shine. So he's actually probably the best hero on offer. I mean, Gru's got his place as well, and so does Karim, but they're kind of usually mid-tier offers. But anyways, to get these heroes out, since there are no 4-star priest mages in the Fortress faction, they always are mages, priest mages. I know, my brain is fried, peeps. But anyways, since there's no 4-star Fortress priest units, look at that. They always substitute in mages instead for when they have a priest on offer. So in this case, you'll need 4 4-star mages from the Fortress faction, and 1 5-star of any that you choose, and that will swap into an Ormus and 2 pieces of orange gear. The reason it's not a bad deal is because, yes, you are using some 4-stars and a 5-star to get 1 5-star, but you're also grabbing that gear. As a new player, that gear is going to be way better probably than what you're running with, and even if you're an older player like myself, I still need this gear because that 4-star gear, I usually save it up till I can fuse up a 5-star gear set. I don't use the blacksmith event to fuse up 5-star sets most generally. I try to avoid it because it wastes a lot of golden gems that you don't necessarily need to waste. Being as you get 4-star gear sets from a lot of events, you can generally fuse up 5-star sets on your own outside of the event, and then use the event to fuse these 5-star sets into 6-star sets, and those 6-star sets into 6-star class specific sets. So the reason I like shelter events is obviously a full complete on the shelter event for the regular faction heroes, not light and dark, is going to give you 2 full sets of 4-star gear. You're almost already there to being able to fuse up a 5-star set that way, which is really, really nice, especially early game if that's like your first set. Being able to get these 2 4-star sets early game, and the next event's going to be Gym Box. You can get a 4-star set from that as well. That's going to give you a 5-star set really early on, and that's really nice. It's really powerful. So we've already talked about the regular faction heroes. In this case, Kamath is a ranger in the Shadow faction, so the 4-stars will be 4-star rangers of the Shadow faction. That's normally how they run things. 4-star warriors in the Forest faction. Gru is a warrior. And then over here should be assassins. Yes, 4-star assassins in the Abyss faction to grab Karim. That's how it runs. And obviously the 5-star hero as well. It's thing. There you go. The 2 heroes I recommend 99% of people stay away from are these 2 right here, the light and dark heroes. It's been a long time since there was a really good hero from light and dark in the shelter missions. Sleepless is probably one of the least used heroes in the game. A, because he's hard to build, but B, because of the hard to build units, he's really not one of the best. There's a lot of better dark heroes. In fact, I don't think there's a single E3 Sleepless on my server, which that says something. And then with Asmo, he's a pretty solid unit in PvP. He's not super great in other places, but again, for being one of the hardest to build units in the game, light and dark faction, you usually don't want to shoot for the mid-tier light or dark units if you're going to build one. You want to build the best ones, like, Belrain, Faithblade, Michelle, things that are going to be really top tier, rather than kind of wasting all that light and dark food on a mid-tier unit. And the big reason you avoid these, by the way, if you didn't know, is 1, it's only going to reward you the hero. There's no gear set that comes with it. Like if this came with 2-piece 5-star or 2-piece 6-star, it'd be a much better offer. But for right now, you just get the hero. That's all you get. And to get it, you have to use 2 5-star dark heroes. So you have to throw away 2 of your fodders to get 1 of these. Since light and dark hero food is so hard to get already, throwing away an extra copy just to get 1 of these really isn't worth it. And if that wasn't enough, just the 2 heroes alone was enough to sell me off of it to start with, you also have to throw away 2,000 gems. So these heroes right here really are not worth your time, and that's just my personal opinion. Some people say, oh, I do it all the time. If you want to do it, go ahead and do it. But I'll tell you right now, neither of these heroes are worth that kind of price tag. If this is a Belrain, and this was like Aspen or an Amuvor or a Mim, okay, I can understand that because those are actually really good heroes that are in top tier teams. These guys aren't so much used. So Most of the time, you're going to avoid these two. But now, with that said, with the event kind of underlined, how you do it and all, we'll go back and we'll talk about each hero in the event. So we've got Walter from here, we've got Ormus, Kamath, Gru, Karim, and then Sleepless and Asmo. Boom. Just before we jump into that, in our arena, we do have a guy that runs a GVE team. And that's Adolka here. He runs all light and all light, all dark team, 3-3 for the Aura. Really powerful team, but as you notice in this guy's team, Aspen, Amuvor, Mim. None of those is Sleepless. In his light faction, he's got Belrain, Michelle, and Faithblade. No Asmodel. That should tell you something. I mean, if those are really good heroes, this guy would probably be running them. He's not. And even though he runs that amazing GVE team, the top two teams on our server, strangely enough, all Abyss teams. 3 Scaries, 2 Crus, and a King Barton. This guy's got 2 King Bartons, a Crus, and 3 Scary. Very, 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 very difficult teams to beat. And they're not just great in PvP, they also destroy booties in PvE. They wreck bosses like no one's business. It's probably the strongest team in the game right now that I've seen. We don't have a lot of redemption users, but we do have a couple double Valk teams in the server. I don't know if I can find one real quick. I don't know. They're somewhere out there. I believe, there we go, double light, he's got the actual redemption aura. Faithblade, Michelle, Sigmund. Sigmund's not probably the most ideal unit in that slot, probably a Shioi much better, but double Valks, and even with the double Valks and such, he doesn't touch the Abyss teams. These guys just rule the server, it's thing. But with that said, that's not really super important. Let's talk about the heroes that are on offer. Start here in the Shadow faction because it's in the area that I want to start with. Whoop. I said scroll, there we go, bam. Starting things out, we've got Walter. Now, Walter's a pretty old hero. He's been around for a long, long time, and he's gone through a couple changes during his time in-game. His most recent change is probably, it's, depending on how you play the game, the best or the worst change he's had. Essentially, what it gave him a 100% chance to stun the enemy he hits with his basic attack for 2 rounds. Now, he obviously always attacks backline units. I don't know if it says that anywhere. Does it? It doesn't. He attacks backline units, by the way, with his basic attack. So essentially, he has a potential to perma-stun a unit in the back line, and it can be kind of nice in PvP. Before, he was mainly a PvE unit for bosses. He had a lot of poison damage that he did, and that was kind of his selling point, was boss fighting. After he got changed for the stun, he didn't really do it very well anymore, and he kind of morphed into like a mid-tier PvP unit, in which, for a lot of people, kind of kicked him out of their teams. If he's not going to be god tier at fighting bosses, and now he's at best going to be mid tier for PvP, people kind of got away from him. You still see a few of them sprinkled around because he's so easy to build, but he's not super fantastic anymore. His active skill is pretty decent. Like I said, an early game player or a mid game player can get a lot of utility out of Walter. He's not a bad unit. He's just, when you start moving toward the end game, he falls off really hard. He has pretty decent burst damage on his active skill, and it also comes with a dot, a 6-round dot, by the way, of poison, which is not bad as well. But the big thing is, for PvP at least, a 50% chance to stun the targets for 2 rounds. He hits 2 people, so usually he stuns one of them. That's just kind of statistics. But he also gains 65% reduced damage for 2 rounds. That's really nice. That helps him kind of stay alive because he is a pretty squishy unit, pretty low health stat. That reduced damage comes very much in handy on Walter. If he gets his active skill off, he's pretty hard to kill. So that's a nice thing about him for PvP early to mid game. Really solid there. Moving to his second passive, this is kind of just the run-of-the-mill passives. Armor break boost, attack boost, HP boost, but he also does extra damage to poisoned enemies. His active skill does poison people, so he generally has a constant uptime on this where he does extra damage to poisoned units, especially if you run like the snake monster that has a poison dot built in as well. Kind of helps him. But we already talked about this, 100% chance to stun the enemy for 2 rounds when he hits him with a basic attack. He always hits backline units, by the way, so that's where his stun's going to land. And the final one, when he falls below half health, he does poison backline enemies for 200% of his attack as damage for 4 rounds. So a pretty decent dot unit for PvP. However, when it comes, like I said, to bosses, early game, he'll be pretty decent. He'll obviously be better than a lot of your really B-tier units, like your fodder tiers, which, by the way, if you guys don't know, 99% of the time, any unit on the 10-star rank that's like early, like Dominator, Lutz, Bade, Aiden, Karma, Field, and even up to Walter, even Bloodblade almost in some cases, your best units in any faction will be the last ones released, because that's just kind of how the power creep works in games. If you're kind of wondering if a unit's fodder tier, if it's like the first or second or third hero in the list, it's probably fodder tier. There's like one exception maybe. I think that's in Forest with Demon Hunter. Yeah, Demon Hunter being one of the first ones. She's not fodder tier because she was just a really early on unit. But pretty much everything like this, fodder, Faceless is fodder, Starlight fodder, Groove pretty much fodder nowadays, Molasses fodder. Just generally speaking, as a general rule of thumb, if they're really early on in the 10-star list, they're usually units you don't want to build or invest in. But anyways, that's Walter pretty much out of the way. Decent all-around unit for early and mid-game. Late game, he falls off really hard. But like I said, nowadays with the conversion and the regression features, it's not a huge deal. If you E3 a Walter early to mid-game and you want to get rid of him later on, you can, and you're not really penalized for it, so it's not a huge deal. That's going to bring us into Kamath as the next Shadow unit on offer here. I would say personally, Kamath is probably the best unit that's on offer right now in the Shelter event, but asterisk, that's mainly for PvP. He also does work well in Tower of Oblivion, because Tower of Oblivion kind of shares PvP rules a little bit. You're fighting a team, crowd control is very powerful, not so much in boss fights and such. So anyways, Kamath, probably the best unit on offer. Look at that, he can fly, he's Superman. But anyways, that's his superpower, by the way. But he's not a bad unit. He has a pretty high armor stat, which is, it's decent. It helps him kind of stay alive a little bit. Decent HP, decent attack, but his big thing is crowd control. His active skill has a pretty solid crowd control chance, 35% chance to petrify. It does hit backline units only, which isn't a bad deal. That's not terrible. And then he also decreases targets' armor by 30%. You might look at that and say that'd be good for boss fights. It isn't. Armor reduction from Kamath in a boss fight is just kind of like, it doesn't make sense because Kamath doesn't do enough damage for that to be really worth your while. You're better off throwing a Cruz in. Sigmund, Lutz even would do better for you in reducing armor than Kamath. He's not a boss fighter. It's not his jam. But the crowd control is pretty nice. First passive here, kind of run-of-the-mill passives, attack, HP, and armor. But the big thing he gets is an immunity to petrification. So Kamath cannot be petrified by Dark Arthropods, Sleepless, other Kamaths. He's immune to that, which is kind of nice. It's one of those things that kind of keep him a little bit more relevant. Any kind of immunity to a crowd control effect is always a nice deal. Kamath has one. But another good thing about Kamath is his basic attack. His basic attack has a chance to petrify. One of the few units in the game, well, I mean, there's a few, obviously, that have it, but not a lot. He has a chance to petrify with his basic attack, a 20% chance, which isn't a very low chance for an entire backline, hit. It hits 4 people. That's not bad, but also, this passive is also going to give him an extra damage boost to petrified targets. So Kamath does obviously best when people are petrified. Luckily, Kamath petrifies people. So in PvP, he is pretty solid. If you can get people petrified, Kamath can get a little bit bursty. Not super bursty, but he does hit decently hard. And it's not bad. He's a pretty solid CC unit. He's not the fastest guy in the world, 1161 speed, but, you can't have everything, right? You can't have everything, people. But his last passive here is also kind of nice. When he falls below half health, he boosts his reduced damage by 50% for 3 rounds. That's pretty handy. That means when you get this guy, halfway to death, he becomes twice as hard to kill. Because you're obviously reducing any incoming damage by half. That's nice. That's nice. It does help him dodge a little bit of bursty damage that would kill him, and it's pretty handy. It's pretty handy, not a bad thing to have. But like I said, probably one of the better units on offer in the event if you're very PvP focused. If you're boss focused or Aspen focused, he's more of a fodder tier unit to you then. But for PvP, he's pretty good. Anyways, moving on from Kamath, we've got, bam, Ye Olde Ormus. Now, there's not a whole lot to say about Ormus. I've obviously had one on this account before, and I've gotten rid of him. Why? Because he is butt. Early game, he's not bad for heals, but the thing about Ormus is he kind of sucks all the way until 10-star. Like, 9-star Ormus is still absolute butt crack, because, boop, we go down to a 6-star Ormus. Eeny, meeny, miny, where the crap are you? There you are. His basic, his active skill, when he's 6-star all the way to 9-star, is very weak. It does very little damage and very little healing. 80% of his attack is healing for 3 rounds on all your allies. Isn't a huge heal. It's actually pretty small. He only really gets a decent amount of healing at 10-star, where he finally gets a nice bump to that heal to 200% of his attack with a chance to heal an extra 340% attack of his heals. So his heals do get better at 10, but even a 10-star Ormus does not heal as much as a 10-star Vesa. So if you're looking for a healer, generally you go Belrain, but between the regular faction heroes, Ormus is the weakest, so you don't see a lot of people build him. There's not a reason really to talk a lot about Ormus, because you only build him if you're stuck with him, pretty much. That's almost the only reason people build Ormus, is they just have the copies, they have no other healer, and they just want to build Ormus. He's weak. He's not really good in the Aspen Dungeon. He doesn't have enough damage to really take on waves. His healing, while decent, it's just not very good. It's okay, it's decently strong, but with his really tiny attack damage, it doesn't really help him that much. His basic attack does heal and do a little extra damage on people, but again, like I said, Ormus he's not that great. Run-of-the-mill passive here, just HP and attack boost, and when he falls below 30% health, he does heal all your allies, which isn't bad. It's a nice little, I guess, safeguard between death. But again, 135% of his attack, sorry about that, throat, is not that much. He doesn't have a huge amount of attack anyway, but that would need to be like 300% or more for it to really be effective, especially when you get to E3 units that have multiple millions of HP. Ormus does not heal very well against high health units. He just doesn't do much. So all in all, Ormus probably the worst unit on offer this event. He's not very good. Wouldn't recommend to build at all. That brings us over here to Kerim. Kerim! Bam. Kerim's a pretty decent unit. He's not god tier or anything, but he does have a lot of utility. Unfortunately, his utility, kind of like Ormus, doesn't really show up until 10 star. Because previous to 10 star, where's Kerim at? Eeny, meeny, miny, Kerim. His active skill doesn't heal him. Which you would be like, well, why is that important? It's incredibly important. Kerim's main role in most cases is healing for himself. In the Aspen Dungeon, that's what makes him kind of nice. At E3, he drops a pretty decent heal. And the great thing about Kerim is he's one of the few units in the game that has a heal that's tied to the damage he deals and not to an attack stat or his own HP. Even own HP heals aren't bad, but he doesn't have a ton of HP, so it's thing. But because he does a heal based on percent of damage, and he's also going to steal a huge amount of attack from targets and gain crit damage. When you build Kerim, you generally build him for crits. Because if he crits really heavy, he's going to heal really heavy. So his crit doesn't, just help him nuke other people. It also helps him heal a lot more. And that's why Kerim's still a pretty decent unit. I wouldn't say he's top tier or in-game really qualified, but he's definitely early game to mid game. If you can get a 10-star Kerim or an E3 Kerim pretty early, he will do some serious damage to people. He's not bad at it. Very, very decent heals when you build him for crit, decent damage, and a huge amount of attack steal, which is nice when you're trying to, debuff enemies and keep them hitting you so hard. That 30% attack steal is pretty nasty. First passive here, again, kind of a run-of-the-mill passive, attack, crit, and HP, but he does have a 30% basic crit, which is nice. It makes him much easier to build for high crit chance. Obviously, that's what you want. The more he crits, the more he heals. It just works. But the snowball effect here on Smash 3 is one of the really nice things for early game Kerims. If you can get a 10-star or E3 Kerim really early in a server, he can even take out things like Valkyrie due to the fact, just straight from this skill. When he kills enemy heroes, he gains 30% attack. And you would say, well, that doesn't seem that powerful. Well, it really is. Early game, if people have really weak units, which they generally do, most people rush one hero up, and in a lot of cases, it's Valkyrie. This guy is going to kill off the enemy team behind them. It doesn't matter who kills him. If Kerim kills him, one of your team kills him, your monster kills them, doesn't matter. Anytime they die, he's going to get that buff. So he can have a monstrous amount of attack if the enemy has just one really good unit, and that's all they're relying on, kind of like you are, except for when it comes down to your unit versus their unit in the end, your unit has a huge amount of attack buffs. And that's kind of what makes him really nice, because it also boosts the crap out of his healing, because he has a huge amount of attack now. And it just kind of works. It's really solid snowball effect. When you start killing people, he hits even harder. And for early to mid game, it's really powerful. Late game, of course, he does fall off when you're fighting a lot of E3 units. Kerim does kind of get pooped on. He has no innate crowd control resistance and things like that. So he does get kind of wrecked in the in-game PvP areas. He can still do okay versus some bosses if you can keep him alive. His heals can help him with that, and his attack reduction, not a bad deal. But his last passive here, even his basic attack does give him a heal based on percent of damage done. Now, again, the basic attack's not as strong as his active skill, so you don't get quite as big a heals on this. But if you built him for crit and crit damage, even these basic attacks can heal him for a decent chunk of health, and that's important. His big weaknesses, I would say, would be anything that reduces crit, because if he's not critting, his heals are pretty butthole, so you gotta watch out for that. Things like Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Queen. Queen is very dangerous to Kerim because she reduces crit, not just with her basic attack, but also with her active skill. And that's really, really dangerous for Kerim, not just in the arena, but also in the Aspen Dungeon. If you run into Queens there, she can be a problem for Kerims. But there you go, there's Kerim. He's kind of a mid-tier guy. He runs through PvP and PvE, but later game he kind of falls off in both. Whatevs, it's thing. Boom, moving on. We're going to wrap this up. We're getting there. We got Gru. Now, I've built 10-star Gru before, as you can see, and he's a pretty solid unit. His biggest weakness is right here. His attack is very low. And in the new meta with Valkyrie doing percent-based burn dots based on high HP, he's really gotten a lot worse. Before Valk came out, Gru was probably one of the best tanks in the game because it was super hard to kill the guy. Not only does he have a nice little heal on his active skill, it's not a huge heal, but it's a heal. He also is going to absorb armor from the enemy, so he gets more armor, heals a little bit for a 6-round heal, by the way, so it does stack over on itself when you get it procced more than once. But another thing is, when he gets hit, he reduces enemy attack and crit. So enemies that hit Gru start hitting weaker and weaker as they hit Gru more and more, which makes Gru, again, kind of hard to kill. Pair that with a nice chunk of reduced damage given to him naturally by his passive skills, and something like the Rune's Power that gives another 30% reduced damage, and you have a unit with a huge amount of reduced damage that makes people hit him softer while he heals. It's pretty tough. It's actually pretty hard to kill him until heavy dots came out, like Xia and Valkyries. Valkyries really eat him alive. But the last passive here, when he gets hit, he has a 100% chance. I'm sure I put the 100% chance in there. If it's a 100% chance, just say he counterattacks. I don't know why they do that. They do. But anyways, he counterattacks, dealing 200% of his attack as damage. Now, it's not a huge damage. Like I said, he doesn't have a lot of attack. But because he was a really nice tank for a long time and still early to mid-game, he can be pretty handy. Even in places like the Aspen dungeon, not very good against healers, obviously, because he doesn't have a lot of damage, but he can outlast a lot of units in a fight just because he won't die. And that was kind of Gru's big selling point, is the fact that he's pretty hard to kill, especially at E3 with Resilience passive. He was a tough cookie to crack, but like I said, with Valkyrie coming out doing an HP-based dot, he just kind of gets wrecked on now. So he was pretty solid, and now he's still decent, but not great. But not super great. He still has a soft place in my heart. But anyways, that brings us here to the Dark Heroes. Like I said before, though, I've never built either of these units on official servers. I don't ever plan to, because they're just, when you're going to build one, you don't pick the weak ones. Like, you're going to pick Aspen. Or I guess Aspen. You're going to pick Mim. You're going to pick Amu. You're going to pick Dasmog. You know, you're not going to pick Sleepless as your dark build, or you shouldn't pick Sleepless as your dark build. But either way, he's a mid-tier unit, I would say. Probably better than most of your mid-tier regular faction units. But he does have some decent things that go for him. Extra round mark damage, which can be a little bit bursty early game. His active skill don't have a chance to petrify his basic attack. I think it's his basic attack. I don't know, whatever. Any hoodles. When he hits them, he hits all enemies, which isn't bad. Gives him a round mark, which does 280% of his attack as damage after one round. So pretty much at the end of the round, it procs and it bursts. It does do decent damage. He has a 45% chance to tag them with an extra round mark, which does give him a little extra bursty damage of 200% attack as damage. But he also boosts his reduced damage by 15% for 3 rounds. It's not bad. It gives him a little more tankiness. He does have a decent amount of damage output, but with a really low attack stat, he doesn't hit freakishly hard. He does hit decently hard, but not freakishly hard, okay? First passive here, his basic attack has a 100% chance again to tag the enemy with a round mark. It's going to cause 190% of his attack as damage after 1 round, with a 45% chance to petrify the target for 2 rounds. So a pretty decent petrified chance on his basic attack. Not on the active skill, unfortunately, but his basic attack has a pretty solid, significant one target petrify, not bad, with a little bit more burst built into it, not a bunch. But, moving on. When he takes damage, he also tags the attacker with a round mark, which will cause 185% of his attack as damage after 1 round. So he does do a lot of marks. That's kind of his thing. When he gets hit, when he hits, when he active skills, he drops marks on people that do a decent amount of damage. If you get them all kind of stacked up in 1 round, they do pop pretty hard. But at the same time, he has a 30% chance to heal himself for 10% of his HP. That's not bad. A percent-based HP heal isn't a bad deal, especially when you have a pretty decent amount of health. But I think Sleepless's most notable passive is this one right here. When he dies, he comes back to life. Pretty much. He gets a second chance. The problem with that is, nowadays with the Valkyrie builds and like the big heavy HP damage dots, these really tanky units like Sleepless would probably been a lot better pre-Valk. But after the big heavy HP based dots that Valk drops and things like that, or Xia can drop huge heavy dots, his HP is not so important, and even his reduced damage isn't so important, because dots go through reduced damage. They go right through that and they hit you straight where it hurts. And he doesn't work all that great. He's not, like I said, as a mid-tier dark unit, he's still probably better than any mid-tier regular faction unit. But if you're going to invest in a lighter dark unit, you're much better off picking one of the units that are, god tier even among regular factions, rather than just a mediocre one. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're gonna front a year of your time into building one of these guys, Build one of the good ones. Don't build one of the mediocre ones like, he's all right. No, you build the best. Build the bestest. And that brings us to the light hero here as Asmodel. Bang, Asmo. Pretty high health stat, really high health stat actually. Asmo's kind of a crit-centric unit. That's kind of his thing. He crits, he crits, he crits, he burst crits. It's kind of his deal. Anyways, boom. Look at his active skill. You see the damage isn't very high. 135% of his attack is damage against all enemies. That's not a huge amount of damage, but he tags him with a critical strike mark of 220% of his attack as damage, with a 50% chance of adding another one of those for 140% of his attack as damage. That's where Asmo's damage comes from. It doesn't really come from his actual basic damage. It comes from triggering his critical strike marks. A critical strike mark essentially is a mark that's put on an enemy until somebody crits on them. So when you crit on that person, you pop those marks, and it turns into a big amount of burst damage right off the bat. It's not bad. It's pretty solid. But with the huge amount of reduced damage in the game right now, a lot of people running Valks with Rune's Power, a lot of people running Scaries with the King of Demons, or King Bartons with King of Demons. You have a huge amount of reduced damage out there, and that burst damage doesn't quite hit them as hard as it used to. First passive here, 40% HP, pretty big HP boost. Holy damage, which is kind of like an advanced form of armor break. It goes directly through armor. Still reduced by reduced damage, but it kind of gives you a little bit of extra damage. It's not bad. 24% crit and a natural 15% reduced damage stat. So he's a little tanky, a little bit more tanky. He didn't used to have the reduced damage stat. That was new to him. But as you can see, he has 24% crit. So he kind of centers around critting. You want to stack the crit marks up. Then you want to crit them and burst them all at once and do a lot of damage. His second passive here, his basic attack has a 100% chance to tag the enemy with a critical strike mark and increases his own crit by 12% for 3 rounds. Upon triggering, the critical strike mark deals 90% of his attack as damage. So his basic attack, if you guys don't know, does hit the front 2 enemies. It's a 2-line hit, I guess, the front 2 enemies. It goes boop, 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 hits them both thing. But it's not quite as powerful, obviously, as his active skill. That's what puts the big marks on them. And his last passive here, when he takes damage, so when someone hits him, he also tags the enemy with a critical strike mark and increases his own crit damage by 20% for 3 rounds. When those trigger, it deals 75% of his attack as damage. So these are the weaker ones. When he gets hit, he puts smaller crit strike marks on people. His basic attack puts slightly stronger ones. And his active skill puts the biggest, heaviest critical strike marks on enemies. Like I said, he is a pretty solid unit, mainly built for PvP. That was his big shining point back in the day. Again, with all the reduced damage around now, it's still pretty hard for him to nuke people to death. It's just the way it is. He doesn't really nuke as hard as he used to because the reduced damage stops a lot of his extra bursty damage coming through because it's not done in the form of a dot. It's actually done like direct damage. So he's not the worst unit in the game, of course. He's still a solid unit, but like I said before, for Sleepless, if you're going to build a light or dark unit, or a light unit, I guess in this case, pick the best ones. Belrain right now is probably the all-around best light unit in the game, unless she gets changed. Right now, she's just freakishly powerful. Faithblade, as squishy as Faithblade is, he's still, in my opinion, a better unit for your team than an Asmo is, because he, with his lower HP, will dodge more Valkyrie dots than an Asmo will. Asmo's going to suck him up like immediately because he has high health. So he can sneak by Valkyries for a little bit, but he will trigger her damage over time with his crits or his stuns, whatever I said. Anyways, Faithblade, still a pretty solid unit, not super fantastic, but I would definitely recommend a Faithblade over an Asmo build. And Michelle, still pretty solid, pretty hefty heals, crowd control chance, pretty fast unit, and she, like Sleepless, does revive upon death. Just saying, if you're going to build a unit, build one of the better ones, and especially when it comes to a shelter event where you're forking out 2 light heroes and 2,000 gems, you better make sure the unit they're giving you is going to be really, really good. In this case, it's not. So that is going to be it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please make sure, smash that thumbs up button and show your support if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe as well, and tell your friends about it, because that definitely helps me out a lot. And I will see you guys in the next one.